Good afternoon and welcome, Kent Boehm with Nine Business Group and host of Elevate Your Business. We have the pleasure today of spending some time with Victor Rubba, if I pronounced that right, hopefully.
Yep.
How do we phrase it? A retired entrepreneur with a scratch to itch and looking for something to do. And I'm looking forward to today's call because in the last, we've done 15 or 20 videos, interviews with people starting businesses, growing businesses. But I think today we get to spend some time looking at it from the other side. Is once we've grown that business, we've done something with it. It's no longer our baby. What does life look like? Victor, welcome. Please introduce yourself and what your businesses were that you transitioned, if you want, and kind of what life is like now.
So my name is Victor Rubba. I started my first business actually in my 20s. I was doing some consulting on the side, and I started growing that business. And then I kind of got scared, and I jumped back into a full-time position. And then I got recruited to Bermuda, and I was gone for 6 years. And then when I came back, I kind of felt like I was in a good spot to start something up again. So I went into my first startup. That kind of went sideways, but I got a taste for it. And then out of that, I spun up my consultancy. I started doing work for hire for other companies. I was actually reading about this the other day, and the way I actually got my start was I was enamored with the technology that had just come out, and I started blogging about it. And I kept a pretty healthy blog. I wasn't working at the time as such. I was just doing research and playing around with this tech. And then I started getting a lot of queries from online from people to help them out with projects in this technology. And so demand was great. And so I just kind of reacted. I put myself in a situation where I was available, and then people started asking for my help. There was a lot of demand. And so then I started hiring people to help me meet the demand. And then that's kind of how the dev shop for hire thing began. People always ask me if I'm like a visionary, or was it my goal to end up here? And I have to say, I kind of stumbled into it. I was doing what I loved, and I blogged about it. And then suddenly I was helping people with their projects. Next thing I knew, we were like 15 people. We had some big clients throughout North America, very specifically focused on this one technology that was the hot girl at the time. I don't know if you want to say it like that. And then through one of those clients, we started doing mobile development. iPhones had just started to become a thing. And we were working for a pretty large concern out of California. And they wanted to introduce a mobile client for their multimedia box, so you could stream music and video from your home server. And then that kind of all dried up overnight. And then I had all this skill in-house of mobile development. So I was like, well, we may as well see if we can make mobile games, because it seemed like a pretty new market. It seemed very accessible. I didn't need to like get an account with Sony or Microsoft or get a big publisher. Self-publishing was a thing. So we started building mobile games. And then again, word got out. I was doing mobile games. And then I started having people approach me from all over the place that they had an idea for a game. And then the kind of business model evolved there. I was like, now playing it more like, is this a good idea for a game? Is this something that I would want to invest into as well and perhaps see some success out of it? Or is it something that I have no interest in, and I'll just build it and they'll just pay me for our time, right? So and then we built a bunch of smaller titles that did okay. It wasn't enough to like shut down the consultancy. And but then in 2000, I'm gonna get this wrong, it's been so long, 2009, 10, somewhere in there, met up with someone outside Edmonton Airport. He flew in from Vancouver. We went to like Humpty's or something, and just in the area, we had beer and some food, and he pulled out a napkin and he drew his game idea on a napkin, literally. And then we called the waitress over. I said, what do you think of this? And she laughed. I was like, okay, I'm in. So we built Office Jerk, which was the name of the game.
Office Jerk?
Office Jerk. We built it in 6 weeks. And we weren't sure what we had. Early prototypes, just showing them around to people at conferences. And I actually went to the people working at the conference, the girl at the lunch table, and the bouncers at the door, as I would show them our prototype to see what kind of reaction I would get. And the feedback was really great. So we launched very quickly, and the game went viral. We did 2 million downloads in less than a week. It was a different time, and it was with very little advertising or anything. It just kind of took off. So we shifted gears, and I focused more on the mobile game stuff, doing our own titles. We did a couple more. We had pretty good success, and we ramped up to over 30 people. And it was pretty stressful, though. I mean, I was working a lot of hours, and I wasn't really spending as fast as I was making it. I was like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I'm super frugal. So I was always worried that the next day was going to be the day I had to shut my door. And that's kind of how I always ran my business. And I wasn't really, and also because I tend to worry a lot, I stopped looking at the financials. I let my wife handle that so that I could kind of just focus on the business. And I wasn't thinking about whether or not I could make payroll next month. And I just ran it this way. And I would go to meetings with potential investors in Silicon Valley, and they would pull up numbers that my game did last week, and I'd be shocked in a good way. But I had no idea how much money was being brought in by these games. I was on top of the downloads. I was on top of feature requests, customer problems, and everything else. But I did not focus on the financials at all. And so this went on till about 2014. Then I realized that our rock band days were over, and I couldn't put another hit out, and I was pretty burnt out, actually. So I made the decision to reduce the team to one, just to keep support going on it, and I pivoted the team that I kept back to consulting, and so that took off again very well. We have great clients. We still do to this day. And then I was lucky enough to have one of my employees who'd been with me for a long time. He wanted to rise up and run the thing, so I let him at it. And that was in 2016. He wanted me to step away from the business, so I did. We worked out a really good plan for him to get ownership. And I mentored a little bit in 17. And then less than 18, almost nothing in 19, and pretty much out of the business by then. I still have people who reach out to me personally if there's a project, and I'll still do introductions, and I kind of help with the leads that come in, but I don't have anything to do with the day to day. I don't really know anyone that well in the office anymore. So, yeah, that's kind of the story. So that's how I ended up where I am today.
Fantastic. So half on purpose, half by accident, some hard work, some good timing all rolls into it.
Yep, very much so.
Did you have a transition plan of sorts? And if it did, how did it plan? How did it turn out? Like when you look back now and kind of go, transition was going to be semi-retirement.
Correct.
How has it gone? And could you shed any light for the wannabe entrepreneurs who are going to transition their business one day, and how to advice or words or thoughts on maybe what to do different or what to do better or what to do the same?
I think the first thing is you have to figure out, like, what is the retirement going to look like for you? Like, what are your expectations with retirement? Because I talk to people all the time, and I say, how much money do you think you need to retire? And I get numbers like 80 million, 100 million, and it's like, really? Like, have you done the math? Because I'm pretty sure that seems a little high to me. But and then, so that's the first question. You have to be able to figure out what that number is, and be comfortable with that number when you get there. Because otherwise, if you don't have the money, if you don't think you have enough, then you're always going to feel pressured to start something again because you're worried the money's going to run out, right? So if you're going to exit the business or sell, whatever you do, I think it's important to have in your mind a good idea, and actually having financial advisors. Like, we've worked with a bunch of them, and they help you do models and kind of figure out like what are the steps to get to where you need to be so you can retire, and what is the lifestyle you can expect to have if and when you do that. Some people can't give up certain lifestyles. I have a friend who buys a new luxury $400,000 vehicle every year. That's not me. So potentially he might need 80 million to retire. I don't know, but that's kind of the first thing. And if you can get to a point where you're comfortable with the wealth that you've accumulated and you can make it work for you in a way where you're not going to be stressed out. Perhaps you have residual revenue coming in from maintaining a portion, a shareholder stake in the companies that you've exited. I still have the mobile game company, so I still get some revenue from that. But these are all things that you have to think about. What's the half-life of that revenue? Eventually, it's going to trail off to zero. And so you've done that, and then the next problem is how do you fill your day, right? So that was really difficult for me. First of all, I got booted out of the office, right? Because he didn't want me there, because he wanted to establish himself as the supreme overlord, and my days were all gone. And so I ended up spending a lot of time in coffee shops, at the gym. Spent a lot of time hanging out with people almost twice my age, drinking coffee, because they're the only people that are retired. So you're almost like going out to McDonald's and making friends with some 75, 85-year-old guys doing crosswords. And I don't know, you do that for a while. It's not easy, right? And so I started doing what everyone else did. I started looking for projects. And but I would pick up small projects that didn't take too much time and had a finite length. So for better or worse. And I started kind of like, if people came to me with ideas similar as before, I would determine whether or not that was something I could consider a good hobby project. And so I just picked up hobby projects every now and then just to give me something to do. But that went on for, I would say I struggled for about a year in this kind of flux. Didn't know where to park my butt during the day. I have 3 young kids at home. And my wife doesn't work. So then that's a lot of time to spend with the family if you're always home, and you kind of start to, I don't know, it's not easy. You miss the busyness of work, the energy, the social interaction with people your age, with similar interests and similar goals. But I think after about a year, I realized that I just needed to, I kind of got sick of coffee, kind of got sick of hanging out with people that were much older than me. And I just put on the brakes, and I stepped away from projects. I didn't take on any new ones. And then I just kind of got to the point where I could just live in the moment and just enjoy each day without having to feel bad about not doing anything. And that became a good rhythm for a couple of years. I started playing hockey, I'm more exercising, and travel, like small trips and stuff. But you can be pretty busy without actually working. It's just a mindset. So and now, like, occasionally a project comes up that I get excited about, and I work on it for a while. And then maybe there's nothing for 6 months, but that's fine too. I don't have a problem with that. I like to read, learn new technologies, and that sort of thing. So,
would there be one piece of advice that you would tell owners that are looking to transition their business and go into retirement?
well, I guess you have to understand, the question is why. Like be clear. Why do you be clear on why you want to retire, right? Like, are you retiring because there's something you're moving towards, or are you retiring because it's something you're running from, right? So that's really important, because if you've got a goal in mind, like you're going to be playing golf, you got all these things planned, then move towards that. But if you're running from something, be clear that that's what you're doing, and then you may end up wanting to do something else after you clear this monkey off your back. I think that's really important, right? So my dad was he was a construction foreman with a pretty large Alberta concern for years. He moved his way up to superintendent. And then at 49, he figured out that he had done all he needed to do, and he retired. He's been retired. He turns 80 this year, and he hasn't worked a day since he was 49.
Wow. What does he fill his time with?
Chops wood, ballroom dancing, they go for walks, they travel, they spend 3 months in Mexico every year. They do Europe twice a year. They joined all these communities. They help out with the fringe, and they just got busy doing other things, and he never regretted it. It's amazing, right? It's just,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. What is the biggest challenge you overcame when in starting your business and growing it? Kind of what was the problem? How did you solve it? And what does it look like? What was the outcome when it was solved?
The biggest problem, the biggest problems I had with the business was I felt like in the consulting side, the biggest concern was always like suddenly, and it happens over and over again. You end up becoming, you get one client that kind of overwhelms and becomes kind of like 90% of your business, right? And so when that business goes away, then you have to adjust really quickly, right? So the biggest challenge I had, and it continues to be a problem in that business today, is that how do you spread out your revenue across multiple clients? Because you don't want to say no to a client that's a really good client and they want to give you more and more work, and that's great, but then you become a one client shop. And so in consultancy, that's a problem. Also, if you're trying to get your business valued rather, if you're a one customer shop and you don't have like an ongoing 5-year maintenance agreement, your company's not worth much. That's one problem. The second challenge was my games weren't real games in the eyes of people that I hired that were considered themselves game developers and game artists. So
Okay.
for the entire time it was going on, I dealt with morale issues because they wanted to work on a real game. And so you're constantly like, but we're making money doing this and people enjoy what we're building and putting into the world. Like, so holding on to people, keeping them happy, it was very difficult. It was one of the reasons ultimately that I pulled the plug on it, because I couldn't find a way to overcome it. I just couldn't. It was I don't know, it was hard. The last thing, and this is really difficult, I think, when you're trying to exit, is like stepping away from the business so people are hiring your company and not you. And that's very difficult to do. And the way we did that is I stopped being customer facing earlier on, so that occasionally you have to step back in, but it became like the company started to stand on its own as a company and less about me. And that took a really long time, but you really have to stick to it if you plan to exit at some point, because otherwise they only want to talk to you all the time, right?
What was the biggest challenge in that? Is it a trust issue? Is it comfort? Is it comfort? Is it identity? As you step away from the client-facing meetings, what was I'm assuming, an emotional challenge, or was it do I trust my team challenge?
It's a trust thing, right? Because you have to put someone else in there and you don't want to have to step back in, but you can't just put anyone in there, right? Someone might be a really hard worker, really smart and stuff, and you trust them with everything, but there's just not that rapport with the client, right? And you have to be able to pick up on that really quickly. I think the way I changed it is initially I handled it all myself, but eventually I started bringing 2 other faces to meetings. And so they got to know at least a portion of the team at all times. So then I could go on vacation because they'd be like, let me talk to Victor or Bob or Steve, right? And then that worked. And so we just kept doing that, right? I always brought other people to the meetings. I never did anything by myself anymore. And then eventually I didn't go to the meetings, right? And that
Awesome.
solved it for me. Yeah.
That's great. I love it. I think that's genius. In the years since you started your business, grew your business to today, think back, what was your original definition of a successful business? Did you have one?
That's a good question. I guess successful business for me was to make enough money to put food on the table and not have to go back and work for someone else. That's pretty much
Simple.
it.
I love it. Is it the same definition
freedom,
today?
right? What's that?
Is it the same definition today?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think I could have probably been more successful But depending on how you measure that, but I was pretty content with where I'd gotten. And even today, I don't regret anything I did. I feel like I tried to balance things as much as possible, which is health, family, and business. And I think you can't let any of them fall to the wayside. Otherwise, I don't know. I feel like you don't have anything if you don't have all three kind of in check. So, yeah.
Cool. In the interviews we've done lately, there's a lot of conversation around a successful business having an impact. Was that something important to you, or is that something that is more modern day 2022 version of a successful business? Or was that a thing that was in your vernacular 10, 15 years ago, is to have an impact?
I hired a lot of kids straight out of school. And so I gave a lot of kids straight out of NAIT University, SAIT, Lethbridge, you name it, the Vancouver Film School. I hired all across. We had a ton of great people work for us over the years. I helped people become Canadians, and I think I look back now, it's like they're like my kids. I have one kid, not my kids, but one of my employees is really high up in Apple. One's really high up in Google. One works at Pixar. Like these kids have gone on to do really great things, and they've all started families now. And I like to think I really made an impact in that way. And that was always something I wanted to do. I never did contractors. I always hired people, and I mentored them. I gave them a lot of chances. I tried to give them variety in work so they learned different technologies. And so I made an impact intentionally that way. Unintentionally, Office Jerk put a lot of laughter into the world, and so did Plumber Crack. And there's videos on YouTube where you see little kids just cracking up playing my games. And so I did add a little laughter into the world, a little humor. And I think that was kind of like an unintended side effect, but I'm pretty proud of it.
That's awesome. Good for you. I think that's a great definition of having impact. And you looked at it from hiring, nurturing, and growing employees and jettisoning them, if you will, to greater and better opportunities. That's awesome. One last question. What do you want to be known for?
Ironically, a great dad. That's all that matters to me. In the end, like I think all this other stuff is fleeting. If people are grateful for the chances I gave them, that's fantastic. But I like to be known. I like to just I want my kids to remember me as someone who was always there for them, and that's the only real impact I care about. And of course, my wife still loves me, so that makes a difference too. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's always kind of been pivotal to my existence. Is that's super important to me.
That's awesome. Thanks again, Victor. You've been great with your time, and your answers are not just honest, they're insightful, and hopefully they too will have an impact with the entrepreneurs who are starting, running, and trying to grow their business and fulfill their dreams. So thanks again. Have a great evening.
Thank you.